Now that's interesting. I got a message as I logged on that it said it was being recorded.
Oh, you're on mute again. All right, we're good.
That's the AI thing,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
the
feel much
AI
better. Thank you.
transcript.
All right, Mr. Bernstein, take it away.
Hi, everybody. It's July 7th, and I don't know how that happened in this Tinderbox weekend with Michael Becker. I'm Mark Bernstein, the designer of Tinderbox. We're about to have an exciting Tinderbox week, I think. But here for the meetup is Michael Becker.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the meetup. We typically go around the room and we have new people introduce themselves if they're so inclined. Looks like we don't have anyone new today. We then dig into some tips and tricks if anybody has anything to share with Tinderbox. I actually have one today. I can do a 10-minute quick session on the use of include, which I think is a really powerful concept that people may not know about in Tinderbox. And then we jump into a theme. And today we don't have a theme, so we're just going to go around the table and to see what comments, questions, or anything that people might have. So in terms of agenda, I'm going to throw on both the teaching of include for 10 minutes or so people can see how that works. I also want to give a quick demo on the intersection between Microsoft Word, Obsidian, and Tinderbox, and how those three tools can play themselves together really well in a little project. And then finally, I have a question to the community to help me try to think through a problem. So those are my my three topics. Anybody else have anything else that they'd like to add or talk to about this week? David's include as instinctive boilerplate here. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, David, but all right. Anybody else have any other topics they'd like to discuss?
This is crossing vocabularies.
Got it.
A common command in language environments is copy or include or plus plus include or insert a bunch of pre-written code.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're going to demonstrate.
Okay.
Basically.
It's actually more subtle than that. So the include in in Tinderbox is actually a hypertextual transclude. Now there might be a nuance. Put it another way around, what it isn't is a server-side include, which is I think where people go wrong. So programmers think in terms of libraries, and this comes more out of the hypertextual things. Squint at them the right way, they look the same, but they're more subtle. So, for instance, when you're doing an include, you can do all sorts of things. It isn't just simply importing code, you know, a pre-written text. It can be used for that, but its use is more subtle. And it essentially, I think, and Mark will correct me if I'm reflecting it wrongly here, but I think if you think of it more like a transclude, and if you're not sure what a transclude is, then it definitely isn't a library include.
All right. So let's go around the room before we get into that topic. Does anybody else have anything in particular that they want to discuss today other than the topics that I've raised? Yes, everything is more powerful in Tinderbox than one might expect. I agree with that, Frederick. Again, let's go. Anybody, topics, comments, thoughts, ideas? If not, I'll jump in and start a quick little include demo.
Go for it.
All right. And then I'll show you what and actually what I probably will do is I'll start with the second topic that I had, which was the integration between Obsidian and Tinderbox and Microsoft Word. So let me pull up those files really quick. Chapters. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Get some of the shum away from my screen here. Share. Where'd the sharing button go? Zoom, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Zoom did a UI update recently, and my muscle memory is not good for where the buttons are. Come on.
Change is not always welcome.
Exactly. Okay, so here's an interesting challenge or project I had today. So I've been working on a textbook, or the 11th edition of my textbook, Strategic Mobile Marketing. So it's a book I have been writing with co-authors for a while, and I've finally forced them to actually, this is going to be the first edition where I'm getting my co-authors to write in Tinderbox with me. Hang on, and one of them is just pinging me. Oh yeah, let me find one of my co-authors is just pinging me on. Can I send her the Tinderbox link? So let me do that. Come on. You know, my screen just froze. There we go. All right, sorry, my screen just froze too. Okay. Let me kill Google Chrome. I think that's taking up too many resources. Sorry about this, everyone. I've got like 200 tabs open in Chrome, and I think that's taking up too much space. All right, Chrome is now gone, and I can send her the link. Right. All right. All right. Got it. Okay. So so I'm getting my co-authors to actively use Tinderbox for this next update of the book. And so what we have a bunch of Word files associated with the book, and I needed to figure out ways to get them into the book. So into Tinderbox in the most efficient and effective way. So if you look at a chapter, and part of the reason why we're doing this is, the book's been around for a while, and it's been slowly but surely, Frankensteined in that some content, if you now look at the chapters that we've written, you've got, there's some content in some chapters, some content in other chapters, and we kind of want to streamline the process and move content around within the book, this go around, and doing that in kind of one long linear multi-word document experience would be really, really painful. So number of ways to kind of get this Word document out of Tinderbox and into, or excuse me, out of Word and into Tinderbox. So one methodology is just copy and paste. So you can copy it, paste it in here. Come on. All right, paste it in here, and you get all of the content and pictures and everything into Tinderbox, and that's fine. But having the pictures in here this way, having the content using the rich methods is kind of a bit of a kludge. So another way to do it is you can delete this content, and if you do a Shift Command V, basically you paste special, you can get just the text of the content into Tinderbox. But if you do it that way, which is was my initial first step, one, you'll notice all of the links that were in the Word document disappeared. So if I had pasted in, as I showed you in that first version, you saw all the blue links from all the references and stuff that were in the bottom of the document. I don't know why my computer is running so slowly. You'll see all of the links and stuff were there, but when you paste in as a paste special, those links don't make their way into Tinderbox. And so that can be, and if you want those hyperlinks, that can be problematic. Okay, so then, so again, my ultimate goal is to get these Word documents into Tinderbox with as much of the fidelity that I possibly can, especially the links and the formatting and the sections. So when we first started doing it too, we were thinking, well, one of the better ways to do it would be go in here and then manually go through each section and put in hashtags, which you then can use to use as delimiters to then use the explode function to explode the document at its hashtags. So that's another approach to go about doing it, and it's fairly it's not intensive, but it is manual, and it's a step towards the process of making it happen. So now let me show you this. So then I had the idea late yesterday, because I'm always constantly trying to find a way to refine my methodologies, is to pull up Obsidian. And Obsidian is another one of those really fancy note-taking tools that are out there. And if used well, it's an incredible companion front end to Tinderbox. It's a great scratch pad kind of environment. Rapidly can take notes. It's got an iOS app that you can use. So if you're out and about, you can take notes. And then you can drop a Tinderbox watch folder on your Obsidian directories and pull any of those Obsidian notes into Tinderbox. And also, you can also use the watch folders of DevonThink to get all your Obsidian notes into DevonThink. So there's some really killer front end advantages of collection when you're in Obsidian. Now, if I do the same thing, I copy the Word file. And by the way, Obsidian's free that's another one of the nice aspects of it. Or if you want to do the syncing, it's like $40 a year. So it's just an incredibly great companion to the whole Tinderbox methodology and process. So now I've copied that Word file. And now if I go ahead and just paste it into Obsidian, one of the really cool things with Obsidian, and I didn't know this until I tried it yesterday, what Obsidian has done is and if I look at Obsidian in its source mode view, it's essentially taken it's basically taken the Word file and converted all of the headings into Markdown. And it's also converted all of the links, and we'll go all the way down to the bottom, into Markdown, like here, it's converted all of the links into Markdown links. So now I've got this, I've kind of got the best of both worlds. I have all of my text, I have all of the heading structure from the Word file, and I now have all of my URLs and Markdown, all of my URLs and links written in Markdown. So now all I need to do is copy this, bring it back over to Tinderbox. Now when I hit paste, oops, I don't want to hit paste special, sorry. Yeah, now when I hit paste special, you'll see I've got all of the text in Markdown links. And if I scroll up, you'll see I've got all of my heading files. Come on. Already pre-hashtagged. So this would be a heading 4 in the document. You know, there's not perfect. I just saw an extra heading 2 in there, but that's easily fixed. I'll show you that in a minute. Come on. Why is my computer so slow? All right. You know, it pulled it in the bullets, which I can show you how to fix really quick in just a minute. And you'll see I have all, you know, and here's a really cool thing too. In Obsidian, Obsidian has its version of let me find an Obsidian app again. Obsidian has its version of what it calls prototypes. Not prototypes. Sorry.
Properties.
Properties. Yeah, that's right. Not you know. So for example, you can create templates like so. Here, using a YAML heading structure, and I'll go ahead and show you in their view mode. You know, these properties effectively act as attributes. And so what I've done, and those properties, because Obsidian is written in Markdown, when you look at it in source view, it's basically a YAML structure of writing the property methods. And much like we have zip links, Obsidian has this zip link-like functionality for creating linked documents and such. So there's a lot of similarities between this tool and Tinderbox in this front-end element. But what's really cool about this is once you create these properties, what I've done is I've named my Obsidian properties to be the same as my Tinderbox attributes. And then if you notice, I've used the same methodology like program or project, or if I type in the word entity, like let's say I want to, you know, I mentioned, let's say I mention Eastgate, so I'll kind of type Eastgate, gate, right? And so, oops, right? So now I've created an Obsidian entry for, oh, and it's got to have its that. So now I've created an Obsidian entry for the company Eastgate, if I spelled it right. So when I pull all of that over into like what you're seeing right here, I can then use stream parsing operators in Tinderbox to match this ID, for example, or match that all of the values within that. And I'll just go ahead and do it here. Let's say I were to have copied this over to Tinderbox. Come on. If I were to have copied that over to Tinderbox, I can now use a stream parser in Tinderbox that says, look for the three dashes, find everything within the colons, grab the things with the hyphens, strip out the linking marks. So basically use the Obsidian patterns here and then pull all of that information into with a simple stamp into Tinderbox prototypes or Tinderbox attributes. So there's some really interesting affordances when you kind of marry the best of the both worlds with the two tools. So that's where I'm going to stop talking about Obsidian now. And now that talk about bringing this into Tinderbox. So now I've got my book or this book chapter imported into Tinderbox. And now because I've got my hashtags here, I can then go ahead and parse them out. Now, but before I do that, what I want to do now is I want to go back to my Word file, and you'll see here like figure 511 comparison app types. So now what I want to start doing is, and there's a bit of a manual process here. Come on, Word file. Let's bring the Word file over. I have got to shut some things down here, I think. Come on. Yeah, let me try to save myself some memory and kill some apps. Excuse me, I've got just way too much open. All right, so hopefully this will save up some memory for me. Got it. Okay, so what I can now do is I can scroll through the book, and let's find that first image. So here's an image here that I want to save. So what I can do is I can just go like this, hit save as picture, go to my drive, and we'll go to media, and I'll just call this test image because I don't want to screw things up, or I'll call it figure chapter 1 or chapter 5, and I'll call it _ test image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that name of the file because I'm now saving this image from the Word file onto the hard drive. And then if I go here, you'll see I've got a whole bunch of figures that Mary Beth, who's on the call with us right now, is my co-author of the book. And so we were doing this yesterday, getting so within one day, we were able to get all 10 chapters of my book, of our book, sorry, and all of the images of the book processed in this way. So then I'm going to go ahead and add a new image, and we'll call it the test image. And I'll drop in the figure name here, text image. And I'll copy this name like this. And then the other kind of tool and utility I've been using, and I don't know if you're all familiar with this, is Text Expander. And so essentially what I've done is using Text Expander, I've taken the concept, so the operator that is in Tinderbox, it's an export operator with the caret. You see it says caret include, and then a quote, and then it says clipboard, and then it has the template that I want this include to use. And then I've given an abbreviation fig inc for fig include. So now what you're going to see is I've copied this image, and now I can go back up to chapter 5. And I can now slowly go through the book And you'll see, okay, this is where this is where in chapter 5, I want that image to go. So I could just manually type it. And I'd say, if I were to say include, and I'll purposely make a mistake here, not a mistake, but show you this. And so that won't help me because I've got smart quotes already turned off. So if I have smart quotes, okay, yeah, it's already there. So you see here, if I had smart quotes on, when I type that, you'll see that this becomes a little curly quote, and that breaks the parser for using the term include. So I turn off the smart quotes, and if I were to then paste in the name image, and then I want to tell Tinderbox what template when I'm running this include, and as Mr. Anderson discussed earlier, this transclude, using the include function, essentially, or operator, essentially what I'm asking Tinderbox to do is to go and grab this file, this note, figure-test image, and I want you to apply the pmedia2 template when you do that. So when I render, and then and I was showing you earlier, so I could have manually typed that, but because I had the figure test image on the hard drive, and because there, and because I created this text expander snippet, and this is a function in text expander where it will copy what is on the clipboard into that function. The other thing I can do is if I type /fig inc, text expander will automatically, what I do here? Okay, maybe I have to close text expander to make it work. Or text expander might be fig inc. Text expander will automatically populate that include statement for me. And so I have a whole bunch of text expander operators like this one that I use when I'm wanting to do my work really, really fast. And so then what I can do too is I see that I've got kind of a source note here. So I can grab this, go down to the figure, and I can put that in two places, either the citation key or say my media note. Okay. And so then, so what I'll do is I'll just go do that for every single one of the images. And that way I can now have my images where I want them in the chapter. And if I were to show you preview now, I can preview the text. And you'll see that that image is now squarely included in the text. So what's happening is using the include function, I'm essentially saying, Tinderbox, hey, go out, grab this note and include it, transclude it into the content in this place using that template. And again, the power of this is really amazing. So if that note was not an image, but was another note with a bunch of bulleted lists or a table or anything of that ilk, I could just be including that streamlined right into the right into the document. So let me pause right there because I just covered an absolute ton. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, questions about what we just shared there?
Yeah, this is great. Actually, I was wondering a little bit about your image collection methods. Do you have a fixed folder? How exactly do they store?
Yeah, so for me, I really like this whole idea of autonomizing my assets because I reuse stuff all of the time everywhere. And so in my Tinderbox files, like in this particular file, I have I keep everything in this file. I'm keeping it in the figures file. And another file, I would keep it in but in other contexts, like if I have social media posts, let me see if I can find one. Show you another Tinderbox file where I do something different. Tinderbox, come on.
Oh, and to be clear, these are notes with image links, correct? They're not actually images that you've dropped in.
Right. So no, yeah. So here's the thing. I personally, because my files get up to 10,000 plus notes all of the time.
Yeah.
I don't want to include images in my Tinderbox files. There's no reason why you can't, and there's no reason why you shouldn't. And it can be a really effective method for brainstorming and mind mapping. And Mark Bernstein has showed us all of these really great, incredible uses of having images in Tinderbox. I don't do that. For one, the scale of my files, two, the reusing of my assets in other projects. So what I do is I create a note called Tinderbox, that's essentially the file name. You'll see here, I put an attribute called the media in the name of the file, Fig Chapter 10 Mobile Internet Usage Ping. And then I give it a path. This is where I want you to go find that image. And essentially then using the export code functions, AKA templates, I'm telling Tinderbox, go out onto my hard drive and find that image. So if you look here, for this particular project, because Mary, and one of the things Mary Beth and I are doing too is figuring out, and we'll be reporting on this over the summer, how to collaboratively write a book with more than one person using Tinderbox and multiple Tinderbox files. So we'll be comparing that this experience over the summer. But you'll see here, so I've got in my hard drive, I've got a folder called Mobile Marketing Essentials 2025 Media, because this is the 2025 edition. And there are all the images that we have in the book. So I've got all of those images as files locally stored on my hard drive. For my own personal work, I have a folder called Media, and I've got all of these different subfolders I use for different sub-projects, but the vast majority of my images all get dumped into this folder called Articles. And this is where I store all of my images for like my blog posts and articles and projects like that.
But so on the one hand, you're giving up the sort of local Mac OS file-based control of being able to retrieve those images. They're all basically pinned for you within a Tinderbox file.
No, I mean, no, not at all, because these files all of these images are sitting here locally stored on my Mac. They're in folders in my Mac.
Yeah, I'm only saying because for example, this particular folder has got a ton of images in it. But do they all belong to a particular chapter or?
No, they all belong to chapter 5, chapter 4, chapter 3. They all belong to this book. And
sorry, what I meant is, do they for example, you have the only access to that particular image that is that it's used in chapter 5. If you come across this in the Finder, you're not subdivided them by subject or topic.
Well, no, I don't do that because I let Tinderbox do the subdividing for me.
That's what I was asking. Okay.
Right. So, like for example, let's say I'm working on, because I run Tinderbox, and that's why I dump everything into like articles. So, like if I'm working on a blog post, right, and I'll show you. Yeah, I think I put it in this other file here. Let me pull that one up. Yeah, let me open that other file up. Come on. This one. So this is an example of a, where is it? There it is. I'll scroll down at my posts. Where's posts? You can see I've been working on a ton of articles. Projects, where's posts? Close that. Close that. Where are my posts? I moved, oh, there it is. All right. So here, like all my social media posts. So for example, I've got an image here under the post, Digital Liberty LinkedIn. By the way, this is an awesome book that was just published by a friend of mine, Dr. Matt Stroud. If I preview this, I highly recommend it. I think I need to change the template that this is being posted on. Okay, there it is. Let me, why is my computer just so slow today? Pick this one. Post, yeah, that should have rendered. Oh, there it is. All right. So here's a great example of and an aside, I'm going, what I've also done too is you look here, if you look at my text, so I've written this blog post that I'm promoting for Matt's book. You'll notice here I've got the terms that I want associated with this book. I've got the companies that I want associated with with this social media post. I've got the person I want associated with this meeting post. I'm telling you where to get the book, where to get the copy, etc. And then when I preview that using the Tinderbox template, my template goes in and because it knows where the image is. So for example, in this context, I'm saying the path to this is, or the subdirectory for this image is in the articles folder, and I use a TBX config note. I'll scroll down and show you all that. I use a TBX config note that says for any note that doesn't have a path, go to the TBX config note and get the default path. Right? If it does have, if I want to overwrite that default path, then I can just go and type any image path that I want to overwrite that. And
That's nice. That's a nice trick. Yeah.
Then I can show you an example of that. So that really works out really well. So in this case, I've got Matt's book cover here, and I don't need to include article here because I don't know if you noticed in the TBX config, the media path here was still that, and so the book still shows up because the default path for the media is articles.
Got it.
Go ahead.
Got it. Nice.
All right. So that's how I'm getting my content here. But while I'm on this post element, I'll show you here too, and I can show you guys this later. But this is kind of fun as well. What this template's doing is allowing me. One of the great things with Tinderbox is you can abstract your thoughts and actions from structure and appearance. So. And I don't want to pollute this the post. The core of the post is this information, and I don't want to pollute this core information with the terms and the anchor tags and all of that. I want that to be temporal whenever I want to use it. So therefore, I want the template to do that job for me. So when I hit preview, what the template and the function that's behind that is doing, and when the screen refreshes in a second, you'll see it's automatically grabbed everything in the terms directory, remove the spaces and put hashtags in front of it. And it's grabbed every name in the entities directory and dropped an anchor tag in front of it. So now I can just simply copy and paste this right into LinkedIn, and I've got my post ready to go. And all I need to do is then click on each one of these names for LinkedIn to match them to people within my LinkedIn post. So this makes posting and managing your social media posting just incredibly efficient. And while I'm here, I'll just show you a quick way to play with these images. So let's say I didn't want this book cover here. Let's say I wanted to have test image here. I can very quickly do this. And this is a little hack. I don't know if people are aware of this, but in Mac, if you go under the view menu and and I'll move this over here so you see it. If you go under the view menu in your Mac and you say view, sorry, go to the Finder. You say, where's the Finder? Finder, view. You say view hide show path bar. So now if I go back to my Mac, you see I've got the path, I've got this file selected, so I've got the path bar here on the bottom of the image. So if I right mouse click on that path, and I'll open that up for you a little bit, you see I can copy the file name as path. So by copying that, and if I come back to Tinderbox now, and I'm going to go ahead and just paste it in here. Okay, come on. Right, that's the path for that particular image that I just copied. So now all I need to do is go like this. I can paste that file name in here. I can grab the media directory and paste that into my directory attribute. And because I keep all of my images in this one, and then I can go ahead and paste my main path there. And now, rather than paste, it will take a second for the screen to refresh. Come on. Yeah. Now, rather than pointing at Matt's book, I'm pointing at the table for my textbook.
Yeah, perfect.
Right. So this is, and again, that's all built on a series of functions and templates I've developed over the last year or so for managing images. So let's go back to the textbook discussion. So here I have, so what we've done is Mary Beth will have gone through and we've included all the images for the book. I had, I used Obsidian to abstract the RDF layer of the URLs to get the URLs into Markdown. And then I used Obsidian to get the heading 1, 2, 3 headings from Word to be done in Markdown as well. Now I see these bullets here. I don't like those. So what I can then do too is I can go ahead and hit I can go ahead and create a quick stamp. And I'll just trash that one and start over. So I'm going to say, hey, Tinderbox, what I want you to do, I want to have you make the text equal to the text dot replace. And I highly recommend for you to create some backup notes when you're first doing this, just in case you screw up your replace. It will delete your, if you make a wrong replace, Tinderbox will delete all the text because that's what you're telling it to do, replace it with nothing. And Mr. Anderson's shaking his head because when you're learning, you'll do that multiple times and you'll swear and you'll piss and moan until you actually get your muscle memory right to be kind to yourself and make a backup before you do something wrong. And it's not wrong, you're just making a coding error. So, but I know this is going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And what I wanted to replace it with is an asterisk. So I want to take this rich text kind of bullet with the tabs. This white space is actually tabs. If I show you that in Markdown, I can show you that it's not, these aren't actually, I can go ahead and show you those characters in probably Obsidian is the best way to do that. If I paste in this into Obsidian, what that will show us is, let me look at the view, source view. Oh, it actually just pasted it in like that. Okay, if I paste it into BB Edit, you'd actually see that this is \T's. So I've got 2 or 3 tabbed characters in that space is what's happening here. So now I'm essentially saying, hey, Tinderbox, go through the document, find this bullet with a handful of \T's and replace that with a asterisk space. So I hit apply, and now it's gone through and replaced all of those bullets with asterisk spaces. And so now I've got, I'm increasingly making my document more and more Markdown-esque. Now, I do have a question. I'm going to show and explode, and maybe Mr. Bernstein or Mr. Anderson can help me with this. So I've got a single hashtag here and a space, and I've got 2 hashtags here and a space. And ideally, what I'd like it to do is I'd like to say, hey, Tinderbox, I want you to just explode at the characters where there's just a hashtag and a space. But when I do that, and I'll show you what happens, Tinderbox will dutifully go through the process of exploding that note for me. And it appears, and again, I'm sure it's just a regex thing I'm doing wrong, but it appears that it's exploding at every individual hashtag, and it's kind of ignoring the fact that I told it only to do it at a space.
Well, yeah, because even the H2 and H3 still exhibit a hashtag and a space.
No, but here H2 is hashtag space.
Yeah, but it's also got hashtag space though.
It's breaking it there. You're right. Good point.
Put a caret at the beginning of the line, and it will force it to look for
yeah,
at the beginning of the line. And
there you go. There you go. I knew it was going to be easy.
So it's
yeah.
RegEx does exactly what you ask it to.
Exactly.
RegEx doesn't do.
Yeah. Okay, so in that context, I only got the first one. How do I get that to explode? You're right, because there was only one. So that gave me the chapter. And then if I do down here and explode it again, and I'm now saying I want you to do it for the doubles. And now I've got only the sections that are section 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. I was forgetting the caret operator. And so now what I can do is I move these sections up. And you see now I can slowly but surely start taking that Word file and and breaking it up into its parts into Tinderbox, So now I can effectively manage it. And this has just saved hours and hours and hours of pain and anxiety, because now, as you'll see, what Mary and I have done is we've now got, and her Tinderbox file has chapters 1 through 5. Mine has 6 through 7. This is what we were parallel playing with this yesterday. You'll now see what we've done is we've been able to successfully break the book up into all of its sections. And now we can go back through and start editing the book and then easily move sections. We can say, you know what, this section 2 actually belongs in chapter 3, not chapter 7. And we can just easily move that whole section up. And then when we're done, we can then republish this all back out to Word, because that's what the publisher wants. So this has just been it's just awesome. So let me pause you there, and then I'm gonna go down to the other question that I was struggling with and needing help with, and that's where I can leverage the community. So what we showed here is a lot. We've talked about copying Word files into Obsidian to get it, that Word file transcluded into Markdown. We've talked about using Obsidian, I want to keep calling it prototypes, properties, to mirror the attribute functionality of Tinderbox so that we can get those Obsidian notes into Tinderbox super easily and then break them apart. We've talked about, pulling those images out of a Word file, creating a file structure that makes sense for you, and then being able to get those images in as individual assets into the file easily. We've talked about then, autonomizing the whole giant Word file by using the explode function, and we were able to pull apart a 300-page book with 10 chapters in about 6 hours, and get all of its images and all of its formatting and all of the structure right to then let us go to the next level of editing. So it was, pretty darn simple to do. And then, because Obsidian kind of falsely tags some content, we can just go like this, pull it out. And you'll notice here, some of the formatting's off. This is what all you need to do is here is you can highlight the whole text, and I've got hotkeys for that. But if you go up to format style and you reset standard font, standard style, and you see it's the Command T and the Option Command T. So if you apply those hotkeys, I can reformat all of that text very easily back down to the standard text. So if I see that happening, I would just do that. And you'll notice here, which is kind of a fun affordance as well, is that Obsidian also converted the Word files, the Word tables, into Markdown tables. So again, making this all super easy just to kind of go through and manage it. Now, and what I would have done prior, if I remember to do it, is I would have highlighted that whole text and got the text reformatted before I exploded it. And then the nice thing is, now that I notice what I do, that rather than dealing with and messing around with those other chapters, because I haven't done it that much yet, I would just go through the re-explode process again, just so I don't have to do those individually like that. Right. Okay. So then, now that I've done that, I can then just bring these over, and I've got the book all with its, actually, I accidentally made a copy. Grab all of those, move it out, and now I've got the book with the formatting styles that I actually want. Okay, and then if I go like this, and it's going to look like crap because we haven't really edited it, I can now go preview it, and now I can preview, and that's using the preview template. So I want to go ahead here. Let me pull up the Tinderbox inspector real quick. There we go. And I can quickly change the template. It's using it's using the default preview template or no template. Change the template. And now Tinderbox is now dutifully taking the entire file. There's the image. And we're good to go. And we've got a bunch of editing and stuff we want to do and clean it up, but I could easily then just use my functions for like publishing a pandoc to get this right out of Tinderbox and back into a Word file when I'm ready. Frederick, got your hand raised. You're on mute. Frederick, did you want to make a comment? I think he's not. Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments until Frederick either lowers his hand or raises his hand to chat?
I was going to raise a similar question to what Fred posted in the chat.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Just very quickly, I'm curious how you could take a document this complex, export it back to Word, and have it be a viable Word document. I mean, I just never seen Word be able to handle anything this complex, this long, without totally screwing up.
Because this is the beautiful thing about it, because Tinderbox uses such pure code, it's really clean HTML. It worked. I get about 90% of the way there. Sometimes an image placement might be a little wonked out. Sometimes a table might not render just perfectly. One of the issues that drives me absolutely bananas about Microsoft is I could have a perfectly formatted, great HTML table in Tinderbox, and Microsoft chooses to completely ignore all of it.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And that's the one area where even the Pandoc engine fails. Is that
right?
Not Pandoc's fault, it's Word's fault. The XML in Word is such a mess that it just ignores any type of external properly coded HTML for tables.
Right.
That's the one area where
placement of pictures and other illustrations and their placement on a page is just a mess.
It is a mess, but for me, what I figured out is it really works for me. The images go exactly where I want them with this process.
Good luck.
Well, remember, I just finished a 303-page, 62,000-word doctorate using this process. So I have absolutely been killing myself the last 6 months to make this efficient as possible. But you're right. There are some little edge casey things that you just have to live with because Word's a beast. It's just not in a good way. But that's part of the challenge too. You have to, at the end of the day, when you get into the publishing game, you end up at the lowest common denominator of your editor or your publisher. And that's something you also have to kind of live with. And your authoring team, right? So that's why the more I can, and I'm so grateful for Mary Beth McCabe to be willing to write the book with me in Tinderbox, because I don't have to bring all that Word stuff upstream in the collaboration process. I can leave that to the very, very end because I can't think and write in any other medium other than Tinderbox anymore or Obsidian. Mr. Anderson, hand raised?
Yes. A couple of things. One is David asked me to circle back and just sort of elucidate a bit about includes and server-side includes and that kind of thing. But before I do, I don't know how best to phrase this because it'll sound like a sort of a negative point, but it isn't. But there were an awful lot of points, I think, looking at that, where I heard the word just being silently entered into.
Yeah. No, there's no just about this.
No, exactly. This is why it's not about and it's not by way of critique. It's more thinking than this is something that I've taken on board for 20 plus years of sort of writing for others. Is that so a good case in point is we can use Text Expander. So Text Expander costs $30 US a year, which depending on your currency conversion rate is either numpence or something. But the interesting thing is, why do you do it? Because actually it just solves the problem. Because if you don't have that, you can't even get to the upside of using it. So there's actually quite a lot to unpick, and things like sort of YAML. Well, it's there in the acronym. Yet another markup language, and I think that I only say this for if anyone's listening, is there's a tendency to think, oh, this is all too hard, it's all too difficult. So it's actually quite layered. And the reality is the things you're suggesting actually make sense. And it does mean that for anyone, that means one or a number of things which will be completely unknown at the beginning of this, seeing this, you might need to adopt. None of them are overly difficult, but certainly a lot of them are very unfamiliar and very arcane at first meeting. And the reason I say I hesitate to even mention it, 'cause it sounds like rebuke, is that because the one sort of thinking, well, why do this at all? But the reality is this is actually what you have to do if you want to get to the signing up plans the other side, because most applications don't play nice with one another, not because they're being mean or nasty, but they start from different places. And what we assume is a natural mapping very, very rarely is the case. And so it's a bit like, well, why would you bother to go through 2 levels of explode? Well, you would after you've done it all sorts of other ways and found it to not be very useful, but this method works. So I would just say to people listening, there is a lot of sense underlying this. So if some of the parts seem like a bit of a jump, what's just been demonstrated is taking something that's actually remarkably complicated and getting from essentially one work environment to another with basically the minimum of pain. I think it's the best way to.
Right.
There are lots of other ways you could do it. They all have some pain. None of them have no pain. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother to do this at all. But what is being shown here is that with a little bit of trial and error, or in this case, somebody doing it on your behalf, there is a set of processes which, if you're prepared to follow them, will actually get you through to a useful endpoint in fairly short order. Because your point is remarkably well made, that doing anything publishing, small p, is moving at the pace of the rear marker. It's no good assuming you can do anything that the least technical person in the loop can't cope with.
Yeah, or otherwise, willing to cope with. Like, luckily,
and it's not a judgment.
Mary's letting me guide her along. Do this.
Well, again, I'm treading on eggshells here because my point is not to criticize others for stuff that I know that they don't. That's not really the point. It's that it's more enlightened self-interest. If you think you're going to do a really complicated transform through all these systems, and there are people who have to do it, who are in the loop, who don't understand or don't want to understand, or whatever, or you don't have time to teach them, then you want to think really carefully before embarking on it. If it's your own workflow, then that's fine, and you can make it as complicated as multifaceted as you like. But I think that's a useful thing to reflect on. Again, it's not a point of sort of good or bad or blame or anything. It's just that we like to assume that things just work. You press a button and your table that worked in Tinderbox now works in Word. And I think it was Chuck pointed out, well, actually it turns out life's not that fair, but there we go. Yeah. And then just to circle back, before we started, we were talking about sort of includes and transcludes. The thing is, all these different words actually are slightly freighted with meaning, and the main thing is they don't mean the same thing to everyone. So rather than get too bound up in what the definitions are, and I do understand, I absolutely understand Dave's point about having a singular meaning, but this is something I do know from my own research when I started looking at Wikipedia, for instance, my doctoral studies. Wikipedia says it uses transcludes, but actually it uses server-side includes, really, conceptually. And it's just it's subtly different. That with an include in Tinderbox, you're essentially saying, give me the contents of some note, possibly even this note, as rendered through a template. So that might sound a bit odd, but you might say, right, and what I want the template to do is just give me the all the things in $tags formatted in some arcane way.
Right.
Now that might seem a really roundabout route, but it's actually remarkably powerful, because once you grok that basic premise, you can do all sorts of really quite interesting things. And you can sort of do the reverse with exported text, which allows you in action code to do the same, because you use the operator exported text, said, give me this note rendered through this template. And the template may possibly return you something with no HTML at all. This is where it gets a bit mind-bending. But depending on what you're trying to do and what format you're going out to, for instance, you might be doing export, but just not doing it to HTML, or you might be wanting to pull something back into your note. So that it's an extremely clever way of taking just part of something. Now, because David asked, transclude is a bit purer, and if you go back to Ted Nelson's definition, which I did track down because it's in an unnumbered footnote to an unnumbered preface to an edition numbered self-published book. But apart from that limitation, what he I think was calling includes in the first thing he called transcludes, and in Ted's notion, everything you saw was done a bit like well, his metaphor was a film edit, where you just cut out the frames you want, and then you glue the next ones on the end, and there goes your film. So you literally pull from a particular document into what you want to do. That turns out actually to not really scale really well. And because Xanadu was never built to scale, that limitation doesn't show well, because, and I have played with the Xanadu test rig, which every couple of years winks back into existence and then winks out again. But it's run by someone I can't identify, and they turn it on and off at a whim. But it's remarkably hard. So every typo you make means you have to upload a new source file. So a single typo means it's a complete do-over. Now, if you're doing that in a 10,000 word document, that's just not funny at all, with hundreds of includes. But the basic premise is there. So the idea was the transclude pulled from a known source, basically implicitly from a known edit of a known source. So in something like Wikipedia, its transclude actually takes an identified part of the current edit of something. And depending on how excited you get about these differences, you might be outraged or you may be quite happy. And there isn't really a right way here. I don't think all the people who have different views on this have ever sat in the same room and argued it down to a pointless conclusion. The reality is there are a number of things you can do. The important point is to understand that there is no certainty. So it's up to you using these techniques to think what it is you want to do and see if the thing that you're about to use gives you what you want. Given that Tinderbox export to static pages, it makes it a bit less uncertain, because essentially once you've passed what the question you've asked through the exporter, I see Mark is looking pained at my explanation, so I'll let him correct me after. But essentially, if you yes, go ahead, Mark.
You're on mute, Mark.
Sorry, the pain was from a congresswoman I once worked for, just made an announcement, and it's inconsequential. It's not you at all.
Oh, no, that's
Sorry.
right. Oh,
She's still on my
alerts
list.
by transclusion then. So to round out.
Okay, so
just to round out. So I mean, in a sense, it's caveat emptor really. The useful thing in Tinderbox, because funny enough, because it renders out static pages, once you've called something through an include or something like exported string, that what you've called has been captured. So if the source changes, the output doesn't. It's not dynamic, which sometimes can be in some web systems that use transclusion. And I think that's where the confusion arises. I'm not sure if I'm now thoroughly mystified David, who looks to be about to type something back on his keyboard or not. David. Would it be easy to just say it, David, rather than type it? Or is it only for my eyes?
Well, it's not in the Oxford Dictionary, either English or American. So clearly transclude is unacceptable.
Yeah, but I don't think teledildonics is in the Oxford English Dictionary, but that's another TED neologism, of which there are many. So, I'll take your pick.
By the way, what was the name of that movie where they talked about how the Oxford Dictionary was produced? It was absolutely awesome. I can't remember the name of it, but it was incredible. I highly recommend anybody wanting to see that story where they basically crowdsourced definitions and
With a madman, a
Yeah.
convicted murderer in
The
prison.
convicted murder, exactly. It was such a good movie. Now that I think about it, I want to, before we get too far, and then Wynn and Frederick will talk. I want to go back to what Mark triggered off at the very beginning of his conversation was the word "just," and I think he aptly pointed that out. So much of this is, yeah, you just do this, you just do that, and any one piece of it is, approachable, accessible, generally easy. If you know what you're doing, put it all together, it can feel really overwhelming and complex. And and so I was writing down, so what are some of the other kind of languages, if you will, that I talked about? Markdown, RegEx, Microsoft Word, Obsidian, TextExpander. I mean, there are YAML. There's a lot of like tools, prototyping, attributes. There's a lot of pieces that have come together that I've produced a language for myself over the last 3 or 4 years that had made it work for me. And I also had a project that I've been personally dedicated into my doctoral dissertation, 60,000 words, 300 pages that I probably wrote 10 times. And in fact, Grammarly gives me a report each month, and the last month's report says that I've evaluated 3.2 million words for you. So there's been a lot of learning in this process. So if anyone's, and I think Paul Walter said it best too, on the in Art, I think you commented on it as well on the forum, where Paul had noted that I think of the words were, it's been a pleasure watching you go from what the hell is this, to actually being able to do everything I just showed you how to do. And that took me time, and it took this community to help me do it. So, anything I just showed you here, if you don't know what it is, ask us, ask me, ask the community, and we can get you here too. The beautiful thing is it's not going to take you 4 years. It could take you about 4 days if you and I were just to sit down together and do it together, like I'm doing with Mary McCabe to write the book. So that's part of my effort here too, is to take what took me 4 years, or 10 years plus 4 years, to help people do it in a handful of days. But Frederick, you comment?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a Jabra speaker and I had it upside down and it's circular, so the controls all look the same. So I got confused with the user interface. Sorry. First of all, compliments on doing this. I mean, I think it's great. You look for ways to avoid just doing tedious work and wasting your time and learning new technology and stuff to make it happen more efficiently. And I think that's awesome. I wish I had done that. I've spent so much time with Word and things fighting when I could have done something smarter. So I think that's really cool what you're doing and really great. So thanks for sharing it. I had a couple of questions. First of all, earlier I was asking, and I think Art was asking, how do you keep track of all your assets and everything? And I think the answer is you do everything on a project basis, and everything's in with certain projects, and your folders on the Mac or directories are organized that way. I think that's the answer. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Remember, I've got like this chum bucket of most of my articles, most of my images just go into articles, right? One thing I've learned is to your point, I hate wasting time. And I always look for the more efficient way to do it. And Mark Bernstein taught me this a few years ago, right? If you only do it once, go through the manual process. If you do it twice, semi-automate it. If you see yourself doing it 3 or 4 times, automate the shit out of it, because you're just going to be saving yourself so much time to get it right in the beginning. So that and now I've learned, because I know that I'm going to be repeating processes over the time, especially if I get them right. If I have even 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I'll go through the thought exercise of how to automate something to solve even the smallest of problems, because now, and that's the other thing that Mark's taught me as well, break your automations into smaller and smaller functions. So like I have one function that just bullets notes into lists. And now because I built that function, I can now apply it everywhere when I need a bulleted list. Right. So I've really started to, and then again, I think this is more of a Lumen thing. The more and more you get closer to your content and the more and more you build repeatable processes, like I have primarily only have 5 Tinderbox files, and I only really work on 2 of them at any given time. And in one of my files, I'm writing 3 books simultaneously. And what ends up happening is your mind starts remembering. It's like when you used to work, when you had a book and you're like, oh, I remember it was in the third section of that physical book. My brain is now starting to be able to do that with Tinderbox files. I know it was generally 2/3 up the outline. I know it was in that particular file. And there's also some and I don't necessarily remember it all, but what I'm finding is, as Lumen did with his Zettelkasten, is it's this rediscovery tool. Right, as I'm going through my information, an image that I'd forgotten about will pop up, and I'm like, oh, that's where that was, and it will remind me. So there's a whole bunch of recursive reinforcing stuff that's happening in this process.
Hopefully some of that will be in Mark's new book. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's great. I had a couple of, I'm sorry, I have 2 other questions. One is,
Go.
So I use drafts now, not much Obsidian. Do you use both, or did you give up on drafts?
I gave up on drafts because I think the Obsidian, it's not that I gave up on it. I still like drafts, but I find Obsidian a lot more flexible, especially when you get past and it's so funny, everybody's all, oh, Obsidian's so easy and all that. And well, honestly, when you get into the Obsidian community plugins, it's as programming nest. And if you don't know JavaScript, learning these plugins and all of that in that context, Tinderbox is light years more easier.
Yeah.
But and one of my I follow Jake Bernstein, who's an Obsidian god, and he's been teaching me which plugins to do and all of that. And I trust him, so he just says install this one and do it, and it works. And I don't think about it beyond that because I'm more of a Tinderbox user, and I use Obsidian as my chum bucket to pull stuff into Tinderbox. Because I don't want to necessarily, like art, I don't want to pollute my Tinderbox too much. But like art too, I use all of the tools. I just use the ones, and then I tend to gravitate towards the one that I find more efficiency with. And lately it's been Obsidian and not drafts.
Then my last question is the one where I've been struggling a little bit. I've been using bookends for reference management, and it seems pretty well. And you can kind of jam them into Word semi-automatically, and depending on whether Word has a problem or not, it may work or it may not. Are you using bookends direct for this book you're doing now? I guess since you came from Word, you did it manually in Word.
No, but here's the great thing. Here's the great thing too. I use Zotero personally.
Oh, you use Zotero.
But Zotero and bookends, effectively, when you get at the end of the day, they're the same thing. There's different methods, there's different calls, there's different do this is do that's muscle memory stuff, but they're effectively the same thing. What I learned though the hard way through the doctoral process is and essentially the way I do that, and then I use Pandoc to render the bibtec file to then pull in the references, and we've got a bunch of videos on that. Bibtec, but Zotero, Warden, it's not Warden, that's a password manager. There's a handful of references tools that essentially do the same thing. But as we talked about before, where it starts getting squirrely is when you really want to get accurate with your publishing. And I spent probably 2 weeks going through the 463 references in my doctoral dissertation, making sure that the blog post is italicized, the book title is italicized, but the publisher's not. And going through and getting that formatting right was a freaking manual nightmare, which I hopefully never have to do again. And neither Bookends nor Zotero do that well.
And are you using them with Tinderbox though, or with Word directly?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
and I built some scripts around that, so I don't have it in this file. Maybe I do it in this one. So there's a couple ways that I do it. Let me find the right. I guess this file will work. So I built a. There's a couple ways I use it. I primarily use it for just pulling in and managing my references. So if I were to have a file like this, I'll call it test. I'll put in my page template. I'll say lorem. This a text expander affordance there. And we'll say like at Becker 2. Okay. All right. And then if I apply my pandoc rendering on it, where's my pandoc stamp? Oops. Pandoc.
I think I asked the wrong question, Michael.
Right, but basically that's how I'm using and I will apply through in just a minute. But that's how I'm using to have it pull out. Oh, this one doesn't have a CSS file. But go ahead. What's the right question?
So I think the question is, you're working on this revision, 8th revision of your book,
Mm-hmm.
and you had a pile of references in Word that were part of the document that you're now revising. You
Yeah.
also have your references in Zotero, and you also have stuff
Okay,
in
yeah.
Tinderbox. How are you?
Yeah, so let me show you.
rationalize-
So let me show you how I fixed that. So this was a session we did about 2 weeks ago, and you want to watch the video on that. But if I go down to the references here, you'll see typically a reference is like airship or Boyd. So I ran and we have a whole video we did about 2 weeks ago on this, where I used a regex to parse out the first name Boyd and to grab the year date. And then what that allowed me to do is using Tinderbox to go through every line of my references and get Boyd
Okay.
2020, right? So then once I've reconstructed my citation keys, I can then use the pandoc process and all the other process now be automatically regenerating my table of context.
So you updated everything pretty much automatically once you ran this script and redid it through the tool.
Yeah. And then again, that goes back to that automation thing. I could sit here and manually do that for a god-awful 5 hours, or I spend 90 minutes to create a regex script that parses through that, which I did a few weeks ago, and now I never have to do it again.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Mr. Wynn.
So if I may, Mark A, I'd like to jump back to the defining transclusion question, because I was confused at the beginning from reading, and it was great that you posted the original thing from Ted Nelson for it, because of the way you made it distinguish between sort of current usage and programming usage, where if you think of server-side includes sort of a stand-in for you just include all of the text in the underlying document into your current one as if it were there, and process it like we do in C or other programming languages, or the server-side includes. And his definition is sort of consistent with that. But I think in the discussion, there are a couple of interesting things that may refine the definition, which of course is not the dictionaries yet. One is that if I understood what you were describing as Tinderbox transclusion, there is a transformational step, which actually makes more sense with the word, that there is a transformation that goes along with it, not just including, which is sort of what the other things were doing. And Nelson may have had that in mind in the way that he was thinking about the term, but that's not what the text said for it. A subset, but I think common version of that some systems have, is a partial inclusion, where you can say, I want lines 50 to 100 from this. So that's a subsetting is a transformation. It's a very specific one, but it fits that. And the third is where there's a dynamic element to it. So as you described, rendering is a more dynamic thing, but I've also seen it in a context where you're looking at a document which has which incorporates other content, which I hate that word, into it, but it is live in the sense that if the underlying source changes, the thing you are looking at also changes for it. And I don't know that this is well defined anywhere, but exploring that space is kind of interesting.
No, I think you've succinctly explained why there isn't a succinct definition for transclusion. But the useful thing that comes out of it, so it's whatever you need it to be. Therefore, if you're going to use the mechanism, don't expect the machine to do it for you. Understand what you want, and then make sure that what you are getting is what you want. Which is, of course, not what we want, because we want the machine to make life easier and do all the work for us. But sometimes we have to make the decision. I think way back, I think part of the confusion about the thing of sort of what I refer to server-side includes and transclusion is that I think there was parallel evolution. So my understanding is libraries came out of the Sage program, and they came out of the concept of code reuse. So you didn't want to keep rewriting, embedding code. So this is what, back in the early 60s, and they've ended up in sort of the same place. I think where the confusion arises is depending on what your hinterland is when you first come to that. So if you're probably someone who's a classical, if you are a programmer and that's all you do, you probably will end up with a slightly different expectation of the transclusion process to someone who's just basically trying to do stuff with text. And neither approach is wrong. And this is the difficulty when we strive for having one definition, is that all those things are probably correct. There's essentially been a sort of, in a sense, a semantic collision, and I think that the useful thing is to just understand that doing an inclusion covers a number of things. So unless you are absolutely certain how it works, it behooves you just to spend an extra loop to go back and say, okay, is it going to do the thing I actually thought it was going to do? And if it does, that's fine. If not, you might need to check with somebody else or read a bit more. And I think that's about as easy as it gets at the moment.
And I'd probably just footnote that my impression, although it also has to do with where I started with this, is that the dominant understanding in the world of programmers now for the term comes with the way that C did it with the preprocessor, which is you just bring in the contents and then treat it as if it had always been there for whatever you're going to do.
Doug.
So I think a little bit of context might be helpful, or historical context. I'm pretty sure that the reason that include came into programming languages was quite simply because of paper tape and card decks. And if you were punching cards and you often needed common blocks of code in your card deck, punching that extra set of cards, inserting them into the correct place in a physical deck of cards was hard. It was even harder with paper tape. So include came about as a simple means to say, all right, I've got a computer which is powerful enough to keep snippets of code in some files. And then when I put in a card deck, I can say, include that file. And hence, card material was saved, time was saved, mistakes of getting them in the wrong place in the card deck was eliminated. And then somebody could make an update to that include file and have it available to everybody who used it. So I think, maybe saying that was the original purpose helps explain where that started. And then from there have come a variety of enhancements and improvements to deal with different features of trying to include common material.
Nice. Yeah, Mr. Eddie, and then I'll make some comments. And I need all of your help too. So I want to use the last 9 minutes to get your feedback.
I agree with Chuck's comments and my coming up through programming also. But now we're in, I think I've remarked in the past, one of my windmills is, to the best of my knowledge, there is no professional cross-fertilization between the world of professional librarians and the world of people who write software. I have yet to encounter that cross-fertilization. Librarians basically say, and I talked a number of years ago to now retired the woman at Simmons who taught the catalog librarian course, And I said, geez, we desperately need help to organize the stuff that we do. And no, not interested. And that's been essentially the common response from professional librarians. Software people are running too fast to know they have a problem. But anyway, that's my rant. So
Cool. All right. A couple thoughts from my side. One was Frederick asked about styles in Word, and per the point of Chuck's comment too, this was, and I've got it sorted somewhere. I don't remember the person's name, but I can pull up the attribution where I found this. So when you're exporting, especially like through Pandoc or even through the HTML transforms, not only will Word will absolutely and always ignore table formatting. And I've yet to figure it out. And if somebody out there in the world that's listening to this has a solution, please let me know. So I've wasted days of my life figuring that out. For the standardized headings of Word, though, this is actually a really cool little hack that you can do. So if you go into your Word documents, and you create a custom, so you go to styles, and if you create yourself a new style and you title it something new like TBXX, right? You've now created that new style in Microsoft Word called TBXX. What you then can do is if you go into your templates, you will see in all of my templates, I have a div custom style title, and then the style display inline. And what this custom style does is, so if I wanted to, when I'm exporting from Microsoft Word, if I now wanted to have Microsoft Word adopt a style that I've programmed in it, I would pass this custom div TBXX. And Microsoft Word will in fact pick that up and use it. And so then what I can now do by doing that then is I can use standard CSS for web, but if I pass this invisible div, it's going to tell Word what styles I want Word to adopt in its structure. And that's kind of how you fake Word to do the styling that you want it to do. So that's a really, really cool little hack that I found about 1.5 years ago that I use now every day. So be aware of that. The other comment was Bruce asked a question about a digital chum bucket. What I mean by that, a chum bucket is you throw a bunch of blood and meat and stuff into the water and you throw it into the ocean to attract the sharks or the fish or whatever you're fishing for. So I use Obsidian as that. I throw all of my chum, all of the inspiration, all of the thoughts I have into Obsidian, and then I use that chum bucket to attract new ideas and creative thoughts. And then when I actually do get a shark, something biting onto it, I move that into Tinderbox, and then that's work that I'll progress and use. So that's my analogy for that. And it's just kind of fun to say too. And then Frederick asked about redundancy. And again, I think what happens is when you start getting when you're using a tool like Tinderbox, and that's why I struggle with Obsidian's UI a lot, in that it's such a good tool, but it can get easily overwhelming. Whereas Tinderbox's multiple views and it's really a steer structure lets you just focus on the content and not the tool. I find that the tool of Obsidian gets in my way more often than not, where the tool of Tinderbox is out of my way and the text is what's in my face. And that process allows me to get really close to my text. So then I can start, again, that affinity I can start feeling the redundancy, if that makes sense. I just get so close to it, I know where it is. But the other way I deal with redundancy, and this is one of the things, steps that Mary and I are going to do as we go through this next revision of the book, is I use Tinderbox to generate notes and then help me run searches and algorithms. So, I have this term called term, entity, such like that. So let's say I go in here and I type the word Eastgate. Eastgate, spell it properly. Eastgate. Right, and I'll go up in here and type a term, just a term that comes to mind, privacy. And this is a new file that we just started yesterday, so I don't have a lot of my existing notes and stuff that I'll be eventually be porting over. So I've typed those two terms in these two attributes. Well, I actually have action code running in the background that constantly looks for variables and values that I put into these terms. And you'll see what's going to happen if I'm gonna let Tinderbox wake itself up. Sometimes I have to stop sharing to get my, okay. So you'll see what's happening now. Now, if I click away from the note, this is kind of why I wanted on leave. You'll see that Tinderbox automatically created those two notes for me. I can actually go up and click on them, define them, go back and stay into context within my line of work. But if I actually wanted to go detail them more, I could actually double click on the note, and Tinderbox will go and then actually jump me to that note. And what it did is it actually created, it actually created the note privacy in the privacy folder. It actually created the note Eastgate in the Eastgate folder. So now I'm using Tinderbox also to generate note assets for me, which I then later can use to produce my glossary. But the one idea that unfortunately I do dream about Tinderbox every night. So as I was sleeping last night, what came to mind is I'm going to create a new attribute that I'm going to call term index. And so what I'll end up doing is, and Mary Beth, when we're going to go through the book, we're going to say this particular note, this particular asset in the book is related to these terms, but I'm going to use the new attribute called term index. So that way, when I put in the word privacy on that note for the term index, that when I generate the index for the book that says, the term privacy is in this chapter, in that particular section of this chapter, that's going to be used for the indexing, and the redundancy issue will be used for this the general term bucket. So we're going to say, find me every area where, say, rich communication services has been talked about in the book. We'll use that attribute to help us find redundancy. And then for the index, we're going to have only one place where we say, or one or two places where we'll say, this is where we want the term rich communications actually indexed in the book. And by doing this strategy and breaking down these atomic notes in this way, you can actually then use Tinderbox to create glossary of terms, glossaries of entities, indexing of companies, indexing of terms. And again, just do that. I mean, to Mark Anderson's chuckling, right? It's easily done once you have the templates. That one little action is not that hard. And I've already written all the action code for me to be able to do that. So these are all just little incremental pieces that have come together over the years that I've now got this library of stuff that makes my work just so much more efficient and effective. Does that help, Frederick, on that redundancy issue?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Now, if I may, and we only have about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to leave us on this. And Mr. Anderson, maybe this is a project you and I could talk about through the week and report back next week. So part of my concern or my issue now is if I render the let's say I want to render chapter 7. So if I render chapter 7, I've got all of these. I don't have that one working yet. Let me go. Where'd it go? All right. So my question is going to be, is there a way, or can you guys think of a way where I can, let me get this out of the way, where I can actually, so like here I've got a figure in this chapter, here I got a figure in another chapter. What I want to be able to do, Mr. Bernstein and Mark, is there a way that I can use Tinderbox to help me number the figures? Like, so can I know that this is figure 1? And can I know that now that this next include is figure 2? So what would be, and so the part of the way I'm thinking right now is telling Tinderbox, go through the file, grab the file name that is in the include. So I know that this image is in that particular note, and then use the outline order to determine to say, yes, that's figure 1, this is figure 2. And that would work fine if there weren't 2 includes, say, in one note. So I'm just trying to figure out what's the most logical way to have Tinderbox look at where the includes are by outline order and then help me get the numbering of my automatic numbering of my figures. Does that question make sense, Mr. Anderson? What?
Well, I was going to say that the one thing you have to bear in mind is that the difficulty is often, for good reason, you're breaking the document down into sort of consumable size notes that you can wrap your head around. But actually what you want are sequences that run across the whole document.
Yes.
Which means that what you are going to have to accept to do that is that you're going to have to run a number of processes in the background. They're going to have to look at a whole lot of information, and you may find that that's more onerous than you want. So it's very contextual. It depends on how big the thing is and what you're trying to do.
Right.
So it becomes a trade-off. So for some people, the benefit of this will far outweigh all the hoops you jump through to do it. For other people, it's probably a lot of work for not much gain, and you could do it faster by hand.
But let me pause right there. With that in mind, and again, given limited time, I only have 50 or so images here. So worst case scenario, I go through the book and I just manually drop in the attributes. This is figure 113. This is figure 112, because it's not going to change that much, right? And for a one-off project, that's fine. But if I now start adopting this method and I'm going to do it more and more and more, would it be interesting if there's a way to automate it?
Well, you hit the same, and then I'll see tomorrow. You hit the same with footnotes.
Yeah,
you want to number those all the way through, and then
well, that's what we borrow the thing you did with footnotes. Can we borrow that code idea that you were doing with footnotes?
Possibly, but then of course, if you reuse a footnote, the easy way would be put the same footnote in twice, but that seems inelegant to do. But then essentially every time you add a footnote, you've got to say, has this footnote been used before? Therefore, I need to increment it, cross-connect it. Mark, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think I've got a fairly straightforward way to do this. I'm going to assume that our figure numbering style is really simple. The first figure in the book is figure 1. The figure in chapter 6 is figure 38. The last chapter is figure 57. So we're just using one range of numbers. Now, we don't need to do that, but that's just one way.
For ease of use, let's say we do that. I mean, one thing we do want to do is like chapter 6.1 and stuff like that.
Okay, but I don't want to get into that kind of same principle will work.
Exactly.
Okay. When we export, the easiest case is we only ever export everything. And we're only interested in getting the HTML export right. So
correct, and I don't care about the figure numbering until that very end point.
Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a configuration note somewhere that has a numerical attribute for figure number. And at the beginning of the first note, we set that to 1 with an action. Caret action, figure number of config is 1. And now, when we want to export a figure, we get the current value of figure number and increment it. When we do the two things in a function, because that's easier, and we don't want to we want to have a level of indirection because we might want to change things later.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that gives us the figure number. Now, if you really need to be able to have the correct figure number in previews of pages, you could do that too.
Yeah.
What you do is when you set the figure number as a side effect, you set the figure number of that note, which now must be a list because we may have several figures. So we set the figure number in a list to the figure number. Now we ask, Tinderbox, is the figure number that the function gives us actually the bigger than the figure number on this page? If it is, then someone's inserted figures ahead,
Yeah,
or we don't have figure numbers on this page, so we'll leave the function. If it's smaller, then we want to use the one we recorded last time.
yeah, No.
And so that'll get you the sequence of figure numbers.
yeah, that will work great. Okay, I'll play with that. That's exactly what I need to do. All right, we'll report on that next week. All right, now we're about 5 minutes over. Does anybody else have any thoughts, comments, questions about today's discussion? Did you enjoy it? Yeah, thanks. I had a lot of fun with it too. All right, everybody. Happy Sunday. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye.